am Kim Bussey. I am the Key Relationship Manager here, and I am so happy that you are joining us today with our week 2 of our 4-week series of coaching employees through negativity and conflict, talking about conflict resolution. We are going to have a great time today, very interactive. Want to remind you that the presentation will be available at the end for download. We also record, so if you follow us on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook, you'll receive that notification along with some great other information. And if you don't, then go ahead and do that. Real quick, if there's an icon at the top with the hand raised, if you can hear me, go ahead and raise your hand. Keep here, it's great. Also, with that icon, if I say something that you agree or disagree with, go ahead and let me know. If you need me to speak up or speak a little bit softer, I do have a tendency to get going and speaking louder, speeding up when I'm excited. So if you need me to slow down a little bit, go ahead and let me know. And of course, I can't hear you. Laughter and applause is always appreciated. But also just let us know that if you have any comments, we will have a Q&A at the end. But if you have something, go ahead and type it in. We want to hear all about you. As I said, we're doing a June webinar series, and really what we're going to be talking about today is how to coach the individual. Last week we talked about how to keep that negativity from infecting your workplace. Where are you going for how to recognize it? What are some of the areas of it? Today, we're really going to focus on the individual and how to coach through the individual. And then next week, we're going to talk about that conflict resolution for teams. But before we even go there, remember I said it was going to be interactive. So I want you to think real quick of one word that you would use to describe conflict. And while you're thinking about it, we're going to go ahead and get this set up. Remember, one word. When you think conflict, what do you think? Go ahead and type it in this upper box. When I hear the word, Mary, stressful. Okay, so I'm detecting a theme. I have 2 people who say that it's stressful. Go ahead, make sure you're typing it in the top box for us. Unpleasant. CJ, I love that. Drama. How many of you have ever been a part of sitting in your office and all of a sudden, either together or one by one, I cannot work with Carrie anymore. She never gets my presentations done on time. I can't believe that when I ask her to do something, she just fights back with it. And I go storm out of your office. And then the next person comes in, and it's typically Carrie going, if Kim can't get me the stuff early enough, I can't meet her deadlines. The 3-4 words that are just outstanding that seem to have some common consensus is drama. It's stressful. It's time consuming. Not only is it time consuming, but it's consuming of emotions. It's consuming of the team atmosphere. It's consuming, it feels like it's sucking the life out of you. But some of that drama is a good thing. Some of that conflict is a good thing. But what we're going to talk about today is how you can navigate through that. Where are you going to go with taking your team? And we're going to focus more of coaching that individual person through that. Because this is what G.K. Chesterton says about conflict. It isn't that they can't see the solution. It is that they can't see the problem. It isn't that they can't see the solution, it's that they can't see the problem. As a leader, your role is to help facilitate, navigate that waters of negativity, of conflict between individuals, whether it's between you and a peer, whether it's between you and a direct report, or maybe it's between people that you manage, to help them see what the problem is. Because most of the time, what I think is the problem is that Carrie needs to fix it. It's all her fault. And Carrie's looking at it going, if Kim would do this, then it wouldn't be an issue. And for those of you that don't know, Carrie Bennick and I are co-workers. She is our marketing guru, takes care of everything, keeps me straight, also handles our tech support for these webinars. Um, but let's start with that leadership piece of it. Think for a moment about how you handle conflict. Is your conflict negotiation sticking your head in the sand? Pretending that it'll go away? La 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 la. If I don't see it, if I don't hear it, it must go away. By show of hands, how many of you have worked with someone who just ignores the tension in the room, ignores the negativity because they think if they ignore it, it's going to go away? And I see hands popping up all over the place. For those of you that say, okay, I've worked with that person, did that negativity go away? Probably not. Because what happens most of the time is that we bury our heads in the sand because we don't like conflict. And it grows and it grows and it grows. And Missy said it kept building up for the next blow up. Makes me think of that volcano that's inactive and it's dormant, but then all of a sudden, whoosh, it explodes and lava goes flying everywhere. You have to be able to handle that conflict as a leader and to facilitate it, because if you don't, then what the difficulty is going to happen is that it's going to grow to a point that it's going to explode. And that's what generates that negativity. What's something small that we can stop, but we don't, grows larger. Or maybe you're that person who says, man, conflict is great. Bring it on. I'm ready. We're going to get in one room. We're not leaving. We're going to duke it out until we come to a consensus. You know, what could be wrong with hitting that conflict dead on? Well, think about it. Maybe you are that person who says, let's just deal with it immediately. But it leads to a lot of unnecessary facilitation because it's really not a conflict. Maybe someone's just having a bad day. Maybe someone's under an enormous amount of stress. And they take a moment, they think about it, or maybe they take a day and they think about it and they come back, they talk to the person that they're having some conflict with, and they work it out. But as a leader, if you jump in too quickly, if you become too assertive, then it's going to create two things. One, everybody's going to run to you to solve everything, or they're going to try to hide it to present this picture perfect world of everybody gets along. We're skipping through the daisies. The birds are singing with us like something out of a Disney movie. In real life, that doesn't happen. Conflict is necessary. If everyone agreed with everyone, nothing would be done. But those different behavioral styles really has to understand how you can work with that conflict. John Maxwell has a principle. He is a great author, but he has the law of the lid. In this, he says that your leadership effectiveness will never be greater than your leadership ability. And what he means by that is that if you're rated, I'm an 8 as a leader, your effectiveness will never be more than a 7. So before you can begin to coach employees through negativity, before you can begin to coach them through conflict, you need to understand what your style is, how you handle that conflict, what your communication style is, how quickly do you want to address it? Because your role is a facilitator. Once you understand what your effectiveness is, how can you develop that? Because as your role, as your leadership skills grow, your effectiveness grows. If you don't have the skills to facilitate through the conflict, how can you expect your team to want to navigate it? Because both sides of these conflict resolution styles can breed negativity. Good news is that we can always learn new skills. But I want you to think of yourself as a captain. And what we're going to talk today about is there are 4 sources of workplace conflict. Your role as a leader is to navigate your team through those choppy waters of workplace conflict, to avoid that negativity. Or remember, we talked last week about sometimes negativity is situational and sometimes it is more of a permanent, this is who I am, I'm always going to be negative, deal with it. You have to understand that workplace conflict is always going to be there. We're going to talk about some techniques to navigate through that. And hopefully, you're going to share some of your best practices as well. So, quick poll, bringing you back in. Can someone tell if you don't like an employee? True or false? No one can tell if I don't like an employee. And then true or false? How leaders react when stress can create negativity. And if you've ever experienced that stressed reaction or possibly done it yourself, go ahead and give us a couple of examples. I know for myself, one of my leaders' stressed reactions that I used to hear would be that they would slam the door. When they were angry, they would go in their office, bam! We knew that they were mad. And sometimes we didn't even know why. And it may have been stress, but it did cause that negativity within the team. So, false, absolutely. Number one thing that people leaders think is that no one can tell if I don't really like this person. They can tell, trust me. And absolutely true. How leaders react when stress can create negativity. Is how you recover from that that's going to really help you determine if that negativity is situational. It all starts with the leader. And I love these examples that I'm getting. Raising their voices, brushing people off, reacting rather than thinking and acting, tone changes, act anxious, sharing inappropriate information from leaders. Absolutely. All of that is going to increase with negativity. And I want you to understand that your role as a leader is crucial. You help shape your team's reaction to conflict and whether that negativity is something that's going to be embraced or if it's something that we don't have time for this. Let's get going. We're going to keep moving on. Moving on is important. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be perfect because a lot of people feel that way. But I will tell you that one of the biggest sources of conflict within a team is the leadership. Maybe it's that lack of clarity. They don't really know who the leader is, or maybe it's someone in title only. What's the vision? Why are we heading there, and how do we reach our goal? Ambiguity is also another factor into that conflict with the leadership. You have to say what you mean and mean what you say. And once again, you may say, I really don't know the answer. That's okay. Saying we're working through it. We're not quite sure if the final answer is good, but don't overpromise and underdeliver, especially when it comes to conflict. Oh, I'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. And then you don't. Poor communication. I promise you that rumors abound with a lack of communication. And how you communicate is as important as what you communicate. Remember, we've talked about this in the past and we'll continue that with communication. There are 3 factors into that communication. It's your what you say, how you say it, and the body language that's included in that. Also understanding your communication style. Sometimes people just need to vent. Well, if you're highly analytical and you're that problem solver, you want to just jump right in and say, okay, this is what you need to do. But some people just want you to listen. I've been married for 16 wonderful years, and my husband and I have finally decided that he'll ask me, okay, am I listening or am I solving? If I say just listening, he sits back, he listens, he empathizes, but then he doesn't offer a solution unless I ask for his advice. But maybe you're a more relational communicator and you're, oh, everything's going to be fine. We'll work it out. Don't worry about it. Don't make promises that you can't keep. Also, really understanding that sometimes it's all about perception. So if you say, I would do exactly the same thing, or I would feel the same way when talking to someone, then they're going to believe that you agree with them. And then stress, never let it show. Find those appropriate partners, those people that you can trust. Maybe it's a mentor. Maybe it's someone outside the company, like a spouse or a best friend or a peer that you can talk to openly and honestly about how you're feeling stressed. So that that negativity, that stress reaction doesn't come through on how you're feeling. And that stress can be reflected in a couple of different ways. Maybe you're really assertive anyway, so now you're coming across as just aggressive. Or I've got a fast pace and I'm impatient anyways, but now all of a sudden I'm stressed, so give it to me now. I need it now. Hey, I asked you for this 2 minutes ago. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And everything is coming in through the email. High priority. Do you think that's going to stress your team out? Absolutely. Do you think it's going to create some conflict? Absolutely. Especially if you're one of those people whose natural behaviors is to let me just jump in and take care of this, and you're managing someone who avoids conflict. They may prefer to just walk away or to talk among themselves than to come to talk to you to solve the problem. So, supervisor and direct report. So, we talked about leadership a little bit, but let's really talk about that conflict and maneuvering that negativity and conflict between a supervisor and an employee. So, we all have our favorites, right? Those people, even though we say we don't, but we all have those favorite. Those people that we delegate a little bit more to. We give additional responsibilities because I know I can trust them. How do you think that's going to create some negativity? Well, if you have someone on your team that you never delegate to, maybe it's because they're new, maybe it's because they're just not performing. They're going to feel, well, he doesn't like me. She doesn't like me. Why do I need to keep working? Because, Tracy's going to get everything anyway, so I'm just going to kind of sit here and keep just not doing what I'm doing. But also think about that top performer that you're delegating everything to. Maybe now you're creating an overload. They're stressed because they're having to do their job and the next job. Really understanding as a leader, you have to know that one, sometimes taking a step back and going, okay, I know that Susie could do this a lot faster, but I have Sandra and she's new and I'm going to invest the time into her to show her how to do it and walk through this with her. That's going to help her understand I don't have favorites. Monitor how much time you spend with people. Are you spending more time with your top performers than are your disengaged employees? Are there people that you just kind of avoid because maybe you don't communicate the same way or they move really slow? And you know if you get caught with them, you're going to be talking for 25 minutes and I really only have 5 minutes. So I'm going to avoid them. That's going to create that conflict, that negativity. No one wants to work for someone that they think that doesn't like them. How many of you have ever worked for a supervisor? And keep in mind that the hands are kept private, but worked for a supervisor that you didn't feel liked you. I was there. Think, okay, so I was like, and I'm seeing hands come up all over the place. Whether it was perception, whether it's reality, we have to be careful about that. So, as a leader, some of those techniques to overcome that conflict source is know the trigger points, both for yourself and for your team. Those stressors, how to avoid it. Remember to err as human to recover divine. A sincere apology can go a long way. Now, that doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want to do or allow someone on your team to do whatever they want to do and then come back and go, sorry. Well, it loses its power after a while. But to show that, okay, I overreacted, let's come back for it. Make sure you're distributing that work fairly and you're creating those training opportunities. This is going to help you for a couple of different reasons. You're not going to overwork your top performers. You're going to be able to assess and evaluate the entire team's abilities. If I give additional training opportunities, who's going to be self-motivated to take the initiative to say, I want to do that? Or across the board, people are going to go through the training, but how quickly do they get it? Do they grasp it? Do they implement it? Are they excited about it? Or do they want to just say, I don't want to learn anything else? Also, remember communication. So, communicate positively even when you don't know all the answers. And that's going to tie into our last source of conflict that we're going to talk about, which is organizational. But especially during change or when you disagree with senior leadership's roles, you still have to communicate positively. You don't want to create a, well, they told me we have to do this. And, well, I know we don't like it this way, but this is how they want us to do it. Find the positive. And once again, going back to that stressor, is that if you don't know what the positive is, maybe it's something that you talk to your supervisor. Maybe it's something that you talk to a peer to get that. And you want to be an active leader. Your team is going to be more apt to come to you and talk with you when you're there in the trenches with them. They understand that you want to be a part of the team, that you're not a leader in name only where you come in and sit in your office and they don't have any idea what you're doing. Or maybe you do business development. So you're out on the road bringing in new business, but they still have to understand that. You're available, you're active, you want to take that, oh, we have an open door policy and live it out, not just speak about it. We really have to make sure that as we're going through this, we understand that as a leader, how we handle that negativity and coach through it is going to really assist us with that relational conflict. Relational conflict is the second source that we're going to talk about, and they tie in because they both work with people, right? But relational conflict is personality differences. And this is very, very difficult because it's typically not work related. It's one of the most common and hardest to navigate. It can build gradually. Maybe it's just those little quirks. She always leaves dishes in the sink for days, and I'm not her maid. Well, the first time it's like, oh, somebody left the dish in the sink. Let me clean it up. But then people start sourcing out who's the culprit. And then just little passive aggressive notes get put on the dishes, or an email may go out. Remember, we're all adults here. Clean up after yourself. That can grow into this huge conflict of, I'm tired of cleaning up with her. I don't want to work with them on this project. And it breeds negativity quickly because people start talking about it. It's all about the people, right? So they start beginning to talk about it. Think of it like this. Just like water erodes a rock, drip by drip, these outside influences can affect those inner office dynamics. Maybe it's a difference of a work ethic or diversity, different cultures coming in. They work at different paces. So someone's like, ugh, she's always stressing me out because she needs it yesterday when I want to do this first. Maybe it's that need for structure. You've got one person who says, hey, I'm just going to go for it, and the other person needs to map it out. Different values. Or this is a difficult one, but it's a true one. Maybe they just don't like each other. And that's okay. You're not guaranteed to like every single person in the world. But you do have to make sure that you put aside that personal dislike so that you can work together. And if you're not working together, then it's creating conflict. If it's creating conflict, it's going to create negativity, and people are going to start taking sides. So when it's this relational conflict, whose responsibility is it to navigate the conflict? Is it the manager? Is it the employee or employees involved? Or is it both people? And talk to me about what are some of the challenges you've experienced when managing conflict between peers. And if you haven't experienced it yet, as a leader, you're going to. I promise. You're either going to, you either have done it, you're going through it now, or you will go through it. Different communication styles. Love that, CJ. Alienation by both parties. I just don't want to talk to you. Love that. Not becoming personally involved. Thank you, Vanessa. That's a difficult one because you may, once again, those relational conflicts, you may really agree with one person with what the other person is doing is not right. But here's what I would tell you is that there's typically three sides to every source of conflict between people. His side, her side, and the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. Our perceptions color everything that we see, do, and say. So, what we may have said as not to be confrontational, someone else may get that. Maybe it's that passive aggressiveness of, yeah, I'm going to take care of doing it. And they really don't. A lack of self awareness. I love that, Tammy. Their unwillingness to address it each other directly. And as a leader, that can be tough. You have to source it out. What's going on? How is it happening? Because if the team isn't willing to go to each other and say, "Hey, I feel like there's some tension between us. Can we talk it out?" Then what happens is that you do have to get involved. Or they start bringing in other people off of the team, like, hey, Tracy, did you hear what Carrie said? And Carrie's running to Jeremiah. Did you hear what this person said? And it puts you as a leader in that position of maybe you aren't the nice guy. Maybe you aren't the person who's like everybody's going to love. But to coach through it, the first thing that you have to remember is that your role when working through relational conflict is to facilitate, don't dictate. You want to gather them together. You can't make someone want to work with someone else. You can tell them you have to work with them, but it's not going to resolve the conflict and it's not going to decrease the negativity. Heard on the radio today driving in that when you listen to someone, you're giving them an opportunity to hear themselves. What that meant to me is that when you speak something out loud, a lot of times I'll be talking things through, whether it's brainstorming ideas or conflict resolution. And as you talk things through, all of a sudden you're like, it really isn't as bad as I thought it was. Why am I making such a big deal about this? Allowing that opportunity to happen is going to really create that open and honest environment for peers to talk. You may have to meet with them one on one before you meet with them together so you can hear that side, kind of like the children in the picture. But you also want to set expectations. We're going to come together and we're going to talk about this. We're going to resolve it so that when we're done walking through this, people are getting along, we're acting professionally, and the negativity is gone. You want to create that environment of consensus. Many times when we're doing conflict resolution, people walk in with an attitude of, I've got to win and you lose. But really navigating this relational conflict as a leader is you have to create an environment of we're going to all walk out of here winners. We may have to come through, but we're going to talk about that. And you can't take sides. Setting a time frame may be that you say, we're going to talk about this for the next hour. We're going to set a meeting for it. Maybe it's I want to talk with you one on one, come back with this information, and then we're going to move forward with it. But also set a time frame of that if it's something that you've had discussions. This isn't couples therapy. You can't meet once a week with them for the rest of their lives. Setting a time frame of how long you're going to facilitate this. And unfortunately, it may come to a fact of we're going to talk about this. We're going to put some action plans in place. We're going to meet For today, we're going to do a touch base next week, or we're going to talk for the next 4 weeks to facilitate this. But I expect these behaviors. And if that doesn't happen, then if we continue to see this negativity, and if I see you throwing work at her, or if you're talking about them behind their back in the next 30 days, then it's going to proceed to a development plan. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but you have to be prepared. And as you're laying this groundwork, you have to think as a leader 4 or 5 steps ahead of this is our goal of facilitation. But if this doesn't happen, what am I going to do to keep this negativity from infecting the rest of the team? And also assist peers in recognizing their strengths of each other's. So, for example, a lot of times when you're mad at someone, all you see is the negative. As a leader, if someone and we're doing a review, we typically only remember the past 30 days of what's happened. So, if it's great, they get a great review. If it's bad, they get a bad review. Same thing. In the midst of a conflict, we begin to focus on the weaknesses, on the challenges, about what the person isn't doing right. What you want to do is help them focus on what they do well. One of the activities that we provide in our conflict resolution workshops that we give at Omnia is a Strengths and Challenges action plan. It's really easy, but it allows you to give them a little bit of homework before you facilitate this. In advance, have the peer write down one strength and one challenge that they have working with each other. Maybe that strength is that they're really detailed, but the challenge that I experience with working with this person is slow decision making. You want to keep it to one because one is a manageable number. Then have them come together. Maybe if you're doing this as team building, you do a round robin, kind of like speed dating, but it's speed discussion of each person has 2 minutes. This is the strength. I really appreciate the fact that you're detail oriented because I'm not. You make sure our I's are dotted, our T's are crossed, you bring the strength to us. A challenge that I have is because you want so many details all the time, you're really slow at decision making. And sometimes I need an answer to help with this client quicker than you're able to provide it. And then together, and that's key, together they work on action plans to overcome the challenges. Now, as a leader, what you may have to say is, so this is what I'm hearing. Is this correct? Yes. Can you both agree with that? Yes. Perfect. One, by putting it in writing, you're really getting someone to think outside of the box of the conflict that they're in. I have a strength. If it's a challenge, it's one-on-one, and if it's an action plan, then that allows you as a leader to know what their next steps are taken. And the question is about, is it presented to the whole group? It depends on what you're doing. A lot of times I've kept this between when I'm facilitating between two employees, it'll be just between them. We set up that time. I'll facilitate. My facilitation is usually a little bit away where I can see it, but not necessarily hear it unless it gets heated, and listen to them talk it out. If it's a one-to-one peer conflict and they need a little bit more time, that time frame is flexible. But once again, you don't want them to spend like a laundry list in 10 minutes of hammering the other person of, you do this wrong and I can't, I just need these decisions. By limiting it, you make them get clear, concise, and to the point. Now, if it's something that and you're doing as a team building for a group, once again, it's still between those one-to-one people. And what after I facilitated this exercise, the interesting thing that I heard was that what one person perceives as a strength, another person perceives as a challenge. And that could be. We're all different people. But because you're working one-on-one with that person and not sharing, okay, Sam's challenge with Chris is that he doesn't give me enough time to finish the project before giving me another one. But it's kept between those two people and it's a covenant and agreement to work through it. It helps build this consensus of we're working together. I wouldn't share and say, okay, here's everybody's problems with each other and this is what they're going to do to work through it. That needs to remain between those employees and you as that leader. but you can't have them do it with everybody on your team. The third source of conflict is competition. So I thrive in competition. I love some friendly competition. But there is definitely a difference between friendly competition and I will kill you competition. And also knowing competition's the dual-edged sword. You have to understand how your team responds to that. So for instance, if it's a team of producers, a lot of times they love that individual competition. I want to see my name at the top of the leaderboard. I want to be the one generating the most sales. If you have a team of support people that are used to working in a team environment, then you want to think about a team competition. Maybe you take the team and I have 10 people, I'm going to do 2 teams of 5. And we're going to talk about it, but ultimately keep that common goal. You do have to be very careful though. So think about it. Sometimes competition can very quickly veer from friendly to unfriendly. So, what are some of the warning signs that you've seen where that competition is veering into the war zone? Maybe it's all of a sudden what started off as friendly banter is now becoming just anger, trash talk. Yes, trash talk is good, but it can't be hurtful. Singled out for lack of performance. That's yes, if you're the last one, no public shaming is allowed. What you need to do as a leader is if someone's at the bottom, talk with them, find out, is it a training opportunity? Is it maybe they were at the bottom because they were on vacation? The negative comments are facial expressions. Loser with the L sign up above your head. The backstabbing, yes, always trying to one up quickly. Rebecca, that's a perfect example. And that is to me, if you see this, this should be a flashing neon light that your friendly competition is going into the war zone when they stop sharing information. This is all mine. I'm not going to engage with you. I'm not going to collaborate. I'm going to tell, oh no, I haven't talked to this person. I've already got their contract. Because that creates that negativity. That creates that opportunity for people to say, you know what, I don't trust you anymore. I'm not going to share with you anymore. It's all about me. However, you want to make sure that they understand friendly motivates. They share those resources. They keep the overall vision number one. If it's unfriendly, you are going to have those warring egos that sabotage. They sabotage each other, and it can lead to a lack of honesty or ethics. I'm going to tell you what you want me to say, or I'm going to tell your client whatever I need to tell them to get that sale, or to promise them to do something so that I can mark it off my list that I won. If you see any of those signs that you've given, any of those signs of that I've just mentioned, you want to take a step back and end that competition. You want to remind them about what the overall vision is. What do they need to do? And remember, not everyone is comfortable with competition. Take a pulse of your people that you lead. Ask for some feedback. Do you want a team competition? Do you want, or where as a team you're working towards something, a common goal where the team, everyone on the team gets incentivized? Or is it, do you like that give and take? Some people thrive. I know one thing I used to do when I worked in a bank and also in retail when we were trying to bump up some sales a little bit, it was something silly. It was like pass the buck. So at the first of the, do a team huddle at the first and say, okay, for every credit card application you get, the first person that gets that credit card application completed gets the buck. It's $1. Maybe it was a gold coin. At the end of, at the top of every hour, whoever is in charge has that buck gets to keep it. But here's how it's going to be passed around. First person that gets that credit card app gets the buck. The second person gets to go take that buck away. So it's the same dollar that was passing around the team. But it was funny because people would be like, oh, hey, Kim, give me my dollar. I'm taking it from you. Because we did it in smaller increments for 8 hours a day, it was an $8 investment, but we would typically triple the number of applications that we did. And that's just an example for the South. Maybe you want to focus on accuracy or cross selling or team goals. That's fine, but think outside the box for that team competition where people, some people got enough money to go buy a cup of coffee. Some people got enough to go buy lunch, and that was okay, but it was still friendly. If I saw that people were veered into this, I'm going to jump in front of you, nixed it. Talk to that person. Talk to them about why their behaviors weren't professional. Also, make sure that you're really looking and when you're documenting those, having those conversations, is it situational? Is it a one-time thing, or is it something that you need to start documenting because it's leading into an integrity issue? When you're creating that competitive environment, remember, you want to state the rules of engagement. What are the rules? You want to communicate with the team. I'm inspecting what I expect. We've talked about those individual or team goals. And then give frequent progress updates. There's nothing worse than being in the middle of a competition and not knowing. Think about it. Right now, we are in the Tampa Bay, where we are, is in the Stanley Cup Finals. How horrible would it be is that if on TV they never showed the score? If any of you are hockey fans, you've ever watched it on TV, it's amazing. But that puck is so small. So if you're, and it can be passed back and forth, 4 or 5 different people. If you're not paying real close attention, you can lose it. But you don't know the score until the end of the competition. Would that motivate you or demotivate you? I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm looking for. So I'm just going to kind of stop and give up because it doesn't really matter anyway. By giving those frequent progress updates, one, you're saying, okay, this is first and foremost in my mind as a leader. Yay, Terry! And you're letting them know where they stand. When they know where they stand, your team wants to do better. I truly believe that for the most part, people want to do good. So if you tell them how they're doing, you're giving them that motivation, whether it's that pat on the back or whether it's that very specific feedback, they're going to understand it and they're going to want to strive better. If they don't, we're going to talk about that in week 4 of our webinar series. The last source of conflict that we're going to talk about is that organizational conflict. And maybe it's conflicting common values between the company and you, or it has to do with change or task or processes. Conflicting common values lead to disengagement or turnover, especially if there's a change in leadership, or I'm just not real sure where this direction is going. I don't want to be here. Or what you're asking me to do isn't ethical in my book, and I don't feel comfortable for it, so I'm going to move on. Maybe it's organizational changes. Remember at the beginning we talked about communicating? There is an uncertainty and fear that happens. And I will tell you, people are either loyal to their companies or their supervisors. Rarely are they loyal to both. 9 times out of 10, employees are loyal to their leaders. That's you. So if you can coach them and communicate through that change, through that uncertainty, and maybe it's we truly don't know, but we're going to stick together. We're going to work through this. I want you to talk with me. I will listen to you. I'm going to hear you vent to me. It's a huge stumbling block sometimes as well for managers because they're caught in the middle. You hear one thing from your senior leadership and you can't tell it. That was even an example that was given earlier when we talked about what are some examples leaders do when stressed. They talk outside of a meeting, or someone asks them a question and they clam up. It's okay to say, it's not finalized yet, but we're going to work through it. Maybe it's through those tasks. I don't like to do this, so I'm not going to do it. You do it. We talked last week about those people who will say, yeah, sure, I'll take care of it, and then they don't do it. Or, I'm not a detail person. Carrie, you like to do the details, so you go do this. And Carrie's thinking, I don't like the details, and why do I always get stuck doing this job? That starts building that negativity. So the organizational conflict of, I don't want to do this, you do it, now it starts building onto that relational conflict of, why am I always having to do it, but I don't really want to talk to you about it, so I'm just going to do it until it builds up and explodes, and now it comes back to the leader. Or maybe that organizational conflict is in processes. Why do we do it this way? We've never really done it this way before. Why'd you change it? It was working fine. We've done it the same way for 25 years, and it's worked perfectly. Well, as technology has changed, how just processes and business needs and change. You always have to look at your processes. What worked 25 years ago may not work now. But the biggest organizational conflict that you as a leader can experience, and that will definitely affect negativity within your team, is non-compliance. I'm not doing it and you can't make me. They're true. You can't really make them. But what are some of the ways that non-compliance can be displayed? Verbal and nonverbal, or both? And who can be non-compliant? Go ahead and let me put in what you think. I'm seeing both. I see all of the above. Absolutely. So think about it. I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. You can't make me do it. Well, we can't put our employees in timeout. We can't put our peers in timeout. Although sometimes I want to put myself in timeout because I need that break. But we can't do that. But as a leader, what you have to do is start talking to them about what that source of the issue is. Why are they being non-compliant? Is it a lack of communication? Is it a fear? Maybe it's a lack of training. Once you understand what that source of issue, and remember, people, when you ask them out loud and you listen, then they get to hear themselves. They may say, you know what, I really am making a bigger deal out of this, or maybe the source is stress from an outside environmental influence. There's issues at home or an illness. However, as a leader, you have to coach through it. You want to work with them to create an action plan and state your expectation. Non-compliance is never acceptable. You have to discuss it. You have to talk through it. If they say it's a value issue or an integrity issue, listen to them. If it can be changed, it can be changed. But you want them to be heard. You want them to feel valued, listened to, and work together to create that expectation. Once you've done that, you've got that action plan, you've stated the expectation, you want to be consistent and continuous with your coaching. Are you seeing improvements? Are you not seeing improvements? Talk about how things are going. Why are we, the setbacks, the improvements, what are the next steps? And you want to document it. Non-compliance can very much lead to, I've coached them, I've talked with them, I've listened to them, they know the expectation, they're not changing. And at that point, what you may have to say is that this isn't working out. We're going to talk about that in week 4's webinar, to talk about how you can coach someone through that when you've talked to them about everything and try to coach them, listen to them, facilitate that conversation, but they're just toxic. How do we recognize that it's a consistent and move them forward? Go ahead and think about the negativity and the conflict that you've experienced, I want to leave you with this quote. It's by Mitch Temple. He's a writer and counselor in relationships, but he says, negativity is like a lightning storm on a warm summer night. Though the lightning itself may be scary, it helps to clean the air. Negatively charged ions produced by the storm attach themselves to the pollutants, which fall to the ground. That's why the air smells so clean at times. The same is true when you deal with disagreements in an appropriate way. How are you going to work with that negativity? How are you going to work with that conflict? Because conflict can be a very good thing. If everyone was the same, we'd live in a very boring world. We wouldn't get that innovation that is needed. But are you going to embrace it? Are you going to recognize that it is something that it can help bring all those little things to the surface so we can cleanse it and move forward? Are we going to facilitate that in a healthy manner? Are we going to allow it to continue to build? And just like a lightning storm, it can produce flooding. We want to avoid that flood of negativity. We want to avoid people leaving because they want to just avoid what is happening. And when they walk away with the conflict resolved, and it may still be a work in progress, but when they walk away with it resolved, they walk away with it happy and understanding that I didn't lose, you didn't win, or you didn't lose and I won, but more about we are a team and we want to work together for that common goal to reach what we need. So we have a few moments. Go ahead, write down if you have any questions that you may have. Let's go ahead and type them in the chat box. As you're doing that, I will say one question I'm typically asked is, can conflict be something that's overcome? Absolutely. Does it take time? Definitely. As a leader, you have to set that expectation and create that environment where people are open and honest about it, that they talk about who I am, and using understanding the behaviors to say, is this situational? Is someone just venting? Maybe it's that difference of communication styles, or is it something that we really need to get involved in? With the takeaway, so great question, Kimberly. So you do not have to follow us, but we want you to follow us. But at the top, there are some downloads. You can download that Strengths and Challenges worksheet that we talked about. You can download our presentation as well as just a quick guideline for some negativity warning signs. What are things to look for? Also, if you have any questions about, you talked about that John Maxwell's law of the lid, but I don't really know how to do some conflict resolution. We do offer through our online training some conflict resolution training for supervisors. You can get $10 off of it. Go ahead and click on that helpful link as well. If you have any questions, always feel free to contact me as well. And I hope that you found this today very interesting, that it's going to help you, give you some tools to really navigate that negativity, talk about the conflict, recognize what those sources of conflict are, and where to go from there. Okay, so we have time for one more question. I see that there are some people who are typing away. Also, if you're thinking, I don't really know what behaviors we have, go ahead. We offer the behavioral assessment. It'll tell you, does someone need to be more assertive? Do I need to coach them on how to bring up the information, or to recognize they're just venting and it's going to go away? Carrie says that the recorded webinar will be available next Tuesday. Once again, you'll get that notification. Also, all of our recordings are on our YouTube channel. And I look forward to talking to you next week. Actually, you have a guest presenter next week. We have our account manager, Jeremiah Fife, who will be presenting week 3 for you. He's a fabulous, who will talk to you about that team conflict resolution. When is that conflict healthy? How to navigate it to get those energies and those juices flowing to really come to a source of consensus, but innovation and success as well. So, Terry, thank you for your kind words. If we don't have any other questions, I just want to tell you thank you very much for joining us today. And I look forward to talking to you in a couple of weeks. And thanks, Terry. Go Tampa Bay Lightning and have a great week.